You're listening to another Fighting Spirits podcast with me, Gareth A Davies. On this episode of the Fighting Spirits podcast, I'm joined by long-standing and decorated boxing promoter, Mr. Frank Warren. I joined him in his offices in England, just outside London, for a very interesting hour. It was a very special show this week. Frank Warren has joined me for the show, and I've joined him in his quite brilliant office, replete with boxing memorabilia, shiny little silver cars that I'm going to ask him about, tomes on fighting in the 18th century from old newspapers. I'm just so distracted by the fact that there's all this memorabilia around us, Frank. Goat sitting on your shoulder. Obviously, that's about Muhammad Ali. It's great to be here, first of all. Thank you for having us to your office.
Well, it's Queensbury offices. There's all my boys, all my kids' stuff, all of this. So, but it's a pleasure to be here. You know, this is where I hang out. Not as much as I used to now. I'll leave it to them. But when I'm in here, this is where I sit and think about boxing, what we're going to do.
We're going to talk about your life tonight in boxing. Thankfully, I've got you captive for an entire hour. I'm going to broach this subject with you. You were very vocal and very transparent on your views about what happened a couple of weeks ago with the Dillian Whyte-Oscar Rivas fight, the Dillian Whyte adverse finding, the hearing on the day of the fight with the UK anti-doping panel, and the lack of transparency and how it reflected on UKAD, on the British Boxing Board of Control, how British boxing looked abroad. Maybe I should ask you, first of all, put you in the chair and say, if you'd been in that situation, how hard would it have been to deal with, first of all? If one of your guys had been in that situation, would you have had to have transparency with the other side, do you think, first of all?
Well, I had it with Billy Joe Saunders. He was tested positive, and if you remember, Eddie Hearn went on record screaming the place down, saying he shouldn't be allowed to box. Boxers should know what's going on, etc. So that happened. Recently, only a few months ago, I had a young boxer. It wasn't a drug thing, but he was feeling faint at the weigh-in. Ryan Garner, and his manager and the fighter and the trainer wanted him to fight, and I wouldn't allow him to fight. Paul Butler was using a sauna, which is banned in
for weight cutting.
For weight cutting, I pulled him out to fight. It's a matter of record. Many years ago, Danny Williams, I had just signed a new deal with ITV. Amir Khan was making his debut in a 4-round fight, and the main event was the British title fight featuring Danny Williams. And Danny Williams weighed in. I spoke to his trainer at the time, Jim McDonough. I said, "Everything good, guys? Yeah, he's trained well, he's fighting well. You're good, Dan? Yeah, great." Friday night, we're having a bite to eat. He was examined by the Boxing Board of Control doctor, passed him fit to box. I got a phone call from his wife, and she said to me, "Danny's not well. He wasn't well. He shouldn't be in the ring."
I remember that
what?
night I was covering it.
I said, "What?" She said he shouldn't be in the ring, and I said to him, anyway, she told me the story. I rang Jimmy. I said, "Jim, is he okay?" Yeah, he's good.
Jimmy McDonald,
yeah. I said to him, "Is he okay?" She went, yeah, he's fine. And I asked him, I said, "Well, I've just had his wife on. She's telling me something different. What's going on?" "Oh, he wasn't well." Anyway, I said, "We need to speak to Danny." I spoke to Danny, and after speaking to him, I pulled him out in the fight. Now, that was important for us that night. You know, from a business point of view, it was important because it was on ITV. It was our first show back. It was needed because Amir Khan's making a debut. You think, debut fight.
Was it Mario Kinderland?
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
No, it's a professional fight.
It was his first pro fight. Yeah.
You know, he's probably his first fight. He's probably going to stop somebody in a few rounds.
Yeah.
So this was very important. And anyway, I wouldn't let him fight because I knew that if, God forbid, anything went wrong, how do you recover from it? The fella's wife suddenly shouldn't be in the ring. That was it. Stopped, pulled him out. And I can name quite a few occasions things like that happen. What I find about this thing is that you're looking at it and you've got promotional rivalry. You know, Ed Hearn's Matchroom will say Warren's this and I'll say they're that. But this is not about professional rivalry. This is about a sport that I've grown up in and been doing for a long time, that I've got a passion for and I care for. And I'm disappointed in what happened a few weeks ago. I'm disappointed because everyone knew what was going. Everyone knew what was going, or internally knew what was going on. The Boxing Board of Control knew what was going on because of this adverse finding that UCAD had written after taking a test to Dillian Whyte, saying that he was going to be suspended pending his B test, etc., etc. UCAD were aware of it. Boxing Board of Control was aware of it. The lawyers were aware of it. Matchroom were aware of it. Eddie Hearn was aware of it. All of them, all these guys. None of them are poor. They've all got money. Dillian Whyte's made a lot of money in boxing. Board of Control, they're quite in a good position at the moment after the problems they had with Michael Watson. The lawyers making plenty of money, as they always do. Lawyers do. UCAD do okay for themselves and so forth. So yeah, let's get on with this. But the one guy who's in the ring, who's risking his life, who's facing up to Dillian Whyte, who's risking his life, is unaware of it. What is going on? Where is the moral responsibility? Where is your duty of care to that boxer? Because remember, when he fought Rivas on that night, he was a British licence holder. You have to take a licence out to be a British licence holder. Where was any care or duty for him? Why weren't they looking after his best interests? Why didn't they say to him, listen, he had a BARDA test, which he's passed, but he's had a UCAS test that he's passed, and we're waiting for the B sample. Why didn't they explain that to him? And he could have made a choice if he wanted to fight or not. May not wanted to fight. Who knows what may have. He may not be insured to fight. There's lots of various things that could have gone wrong here. It was him. Why didn't they test the B sample, most importantly? Why has the B sample been tested since? What is the outcome of that? This should be out there like it's been out there for other fighters. Like it was out there for Saunders, Joe Saunders, with his problems that he had. Why wasn't any of these things done? So don't tell me when somebody's saying, a promoter's saying, oh, we only had 36 hours or we only had 48 hours. Joe Mullender, a boxer who had a positive test, we got his B sample tested and done within, I think it was 36 hours. We paid 400 quid. There's millions at stake here, but more importantly, forget all the money, there's somebody who's putting their life on the line in Rivas getting in the ring. And he was not given any knowledge of this. And then you mustn't be saying anything of this because of Dillian Whyte, his privacy. Well, just hold on a minute. He himself was suspended, his licence taken away for a couple of years for testing positive. So what is going on here? Why wasn't that sample tested? That would have been the answer to everything, wouldn't it? If you're not going to explain it to Reeves, at least have done that.
Having read the rules of UCAD at the time myself, they give a very strong argument to the boxer to defend himself with the B sample, don't they? Because it's down to him to agree a time to have a hearing after the B sample, isn't it?
That's exactly right. But that's a different issue. That's for Dillian Whyte to prove that he's cleaned the box. Rivas is a total different scenario.
So what you're saying is that the B test could have been tested before the fight went ahead.
What I'm saying is there's all different things going on here. There's the complete mess that UCAD have made of this, in my opinion. They made a mess with Tyson and Fury. It took how many? Was it nearly 18 months, 2 years to get that resolved?
Well, it was the February of 2015. We went there in November 2015. He won the titles from Klitschko, and it didn't surface till the next March. And he'd been tested 16 times in that period as well.
After he sat down,
according to Peter Fury,
and sat down with UCAD, who'd explained all this. So that's a disaster. That was a disaster, and they've not improved on it at all as far as boxing. But it's the difference. There is the welfare of Rivas. There is the situation where Dillian Whyte proving that he's clean to box, not the legal situation. Is his B sample different from the A sample? That's a simple question.
You think we should know about that already?
We should have known before the fight. They could have done it for the 400 quid. If it cost £4,000, whatever the cost was, to have done it, but they didn't.
But it's their legal right to extend it. You see, that's the thing.
It may be their legal right
under the rules. But maybe the rules with UCAD aren't right.
Sorry. So if that's their legal right, and you're saying,
that's what they've exercised.
Okay, let me make my point. So you're saying that's the legal right. Isn't the answer? Isn't then? What is Rivas' legal right? Rivas, what was his legal right?
Well, he doesn't appear to have had one.
I'm going to tell you what he's going to do. I'm quite sure he's going to wind up suing somebody.
I do agree with you that there should have been transparency for him. That's what we're all upset about as observers on the sport.
And the Board of Control are abdicating their responsibility. We need a governing body. We have a governing body. UCAD shouldn't be determining whether somebody should be suspended or not. They should be doing like VADA do. They should be saying, these
Here's
are
the test,
samples,
you make the decisions.
and then give it to the governing body, who we pay sanctions fees for, to run this sport in this country correctly. And then you make the decisions. They have a regulation 9.8 in the British Boxing Board of Control rules and regulations says that any contest that's not in the interest of the boxing, they can stop it. So now we're in this situation now where who's policing the Boxing Board of Control? Who's policing UCAD? And what we should be doing here is getting the sports minister. The sports minister should be calling for an inquiry, and everybody should be brought to account on this, because this is our sport. This is a sport that we all care about. And I know there are people at the Boxing Board of Control who didn't want that fight to happen. And I know there are people who in the Boxing
I've
Board
heard the same, that there are people very unhappy with the panel's findings at UCAD.
But you know what?
The UCAD panel.
But you know what? They should have stood up and be counted. There's no excuse. They should have stood up and be counted. They should have stood up and said to Rivas, listen, this is what's happening. It's your choice. It's your life. You're the guy getting through the ropes. You're the guy taking the punches. This is what the scenario is. Do you want to fight or not? At least give him that opportunity, and they didn't do that.
I will say, I mean, it's a very strong argument. It's one that I agree with. I think you're ethically completely right. And what it does, it says, no one fight, however much money it can make, is more important than someone's life stepping into that ring. And that's why the regulations now need to be changed.
It can't be.
The regulations must be changed, Frank.
It's not regulations.
No, but it is.
It's in the regulations.
No. Oh, I see. You're saying that regulation...
That regulation covers anything to
But the board are claiming that their hands are tied by the testing of a B sample.
The board are claiming nothing. They've not made a public statement at all.
Well, they will follow the rules.
Let me ask you a question. Have you seen a public statement from the Board of Control?
We got a public statement
saying what?
On the Thursday saying the Boxing Board of Control follow the regulations of the testing of UCAD. They just passed it on to UCAD. But that came out on the Thursday after.
And what has UCAD said about it?
Well, I had one independent chat with...
Now, what's their official statement?
That there was no official statement.
It's all under the carpet. They're going to hope this will go
They will
away.
not talk about the specific case, but all they will do is talk about the way it plays out. And they told me, that their head of communications told me that this could genuinely take a year to play out.
Why?
I don't know, but that's their...
Well, how long does it take to test a B sample?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think maybe
Test the B
there should
sample.
be questions.
It's either positive or it's negative.
For me, what's become clear in the last 2-3 years is that UCAD do not have the resources and the wherewithal to genuinely make decisions.
Well, they're pointless then.
Well, I think they might be decent testers, but I think it's time as well to make the board answerable to
VADA test, right? The board don't recognise VADA. A lot of us use VADA. And by the way, they didn't even tell the WBC about this.
That's
the
correct.
WBC have suspended.
They have suspended Dillian until
on the
otherwise.
They didn't even tell whose title it was, and they've been members of the WBC from the formation of the
So
WBC.
a lot of promotional mistakes here, you're saying as well, yeah?
This point I'll make. All you need UCAD to do is test, nothing else. We don't need it to be the court, because their track record at the moment is crap. You couldn't trust them. You can't trust them. So you need, just do the testing, and the Board of Control get off their arses and do what they're supposed to do. It's called Board of Control. Control the sport. Police the sport. Do it properly. That's what they need to do. And if they can't do it, then leave and let's get another group of stewards in to do it. And I don't want to hear, oh, they do it for nothing, it's their time. And do you know what? It's not good enough. Then pay somebody. There's enough money floating around in this sport. Then pay to get someone in there. Pay for a proper administrator who's going to stand up and be accountable for what this terrible situation that took place.
Well, that's the voice of Frank Warren, who's joined me this week for the first hour of Fight Night. We're going to change tack and just change pace and let Frank cool down a little bit in the break.
We've got 2 minutes left.
We've only got 2 minutes left. You've been listening to Frank there talking about the current situation with UKAD, the boxing board, and obviously the case at the moment with Dillian Whyte and the Oscar Rivas fight. I want to talk about your... obviously, it is... you're into your 5th decade in the sports.
Yeah.
You know, you've been around it all your life. You grew up in Islington.
Yeah.
This is your life, by the way. Eamon Andrews isn't
is
about
your
to.
wife.
This is your wife. Yeah. You were the son of a bookmaker, and you trained as a solicitor's clerk with J. Tickle and Co. on Southampton Row in London.
I didn't train for long.
No, you didn't train for long. What happened there then? Tell us the story of that.
Yeah, I couldn't take to office life. My dad made me do it, and I didn't want to do it. I went to local grammar school, and I left very young.
What were your best subjects?
I was good at art. I was good at history. I was good at geography. I was good at quite good. Until I got that's a terrible thing to say. Until I got fed up, I used to be finishing in the sort of top 2 or 3 in my class, and then I just. I don't know, I just lost all my attention, my attention to it, and I was bunking off a lot, doing all the stupid things you shouldn't be doing. Because that's how it was where I come from. It was like that. So
we're talking late 50s, early 60s, yeah?
Yeah.
And you were growing up in Islington. What was Islington like at the time?
It was a tough area. There's a couple of genteel areas like Barnsbury, and Canonbury, but other than that, there was a lot of bomb ruins around there from the war. We was kids. I remember we used to play on bomb ruins. I mean, we'd go out play. I mean, it's strange. You think how you bring your own kids up and so forth. I mean, when I was a kid, I can remember you'd go out and be out till late at night in the summers. Go all over London, go on, bunk on the tube, go all over. I mean, we're kids doing it. You're scared of life out. You're doing it today with teenagers, let alone little kids, and we'd be all over the place. And it was, but we had
nothing to eat all day. I remember myself playing it.
We had. Always ate well. I mean, the one thing you had, we ate well, but it was just.
But you never like today where you buy a coffee and a bottle of water. You don't have water. You just went and you went out all day.
Playing over on bomb ruins. Yeah. Where we bombed out houses, climbing trees, and all the stuff that you're not allowed to do now, or kids are not allowed to do.
And famously, of course, you were approached by your second cousin.
Yeah.
Lenny McLean, of course, who people know of fame. Yeah. Who hadn't just lost a fight, wanted a rematch, but couldn't find a promoter.
No, what happened? He lost the rematch, and he was offered. He lost the fight, and he was offered a rematch. And I didn't like Lenny too much. He was a bully, Lenny. He was a big lump, and he was one of those kids when he was when he was sort of 11. He
had a beard.
He was a big kid, and he was quite intimidating. He was a bit of a bully, but anyway, my uncle Bob. He was on his wife, my aunt Kathy, who passed away. She was a lovely lady. He was on her side of the family. And anyway, coming up to this fight that he was going to have with a bloke called Roy Shaw, ex-fighter who Mickey Duff used to manage many, many years ago.
I remember Roy Shaw as well.
He
these guys, by the way, for anyone listening who are younger, these were the hardest men in Britain at the time, weren't they?
Well,
but that's how they were billed, wasn't it?
That's how it was billed. I mean, it was.
It was unlicensed fighting, wasn't it?
It was licensed, but they called it unlicensed because it wasn't licensed by
with
the
board
control.
Yeah.
But anyway, cut along, and that's why I get so thing about this health, because I've seen it at that level. I was involved in it, so I know what it's like. And what happened was a week or so before the fight, he was told that if he and the first fight, it was ridiculous what happened to him. He threw one punch, nearly knocked out Roy Shaw. Then he crossed his arms in the corner of the ring, just kept pointing his chin, telling Roy Shaw to hit him, which he did about 50 times, and eventually he just sort of slunk down the ring. So my uncle gave him a real over that and said to him, what knows going on, and they got him. And Freddie Hill used to train the Finnegans, took him to train him. Anyway, made the rematch, and I wound up in his corner. I didn't know nothing about boxing. I had another relation, Johnny Wall, who passed away, who was a light heavyweight, who turned pro, same time as Conti, who was trained by George Francis. That was my interest in boxing.
Who trained Frank Bruno and others, of course. George Francis lived in Highgate,
and John,
run around the ponds.
John was a really stylish boxer, but he was a playboy. He never, he's one of those guys that could get away with a natural ability up to a certain point, but he sodded around. He loved the nightlife and so forth. It was always out of us. But anyway, so in those days. But So Lenny had this fight, and on the night it was, or the week of it, there was all sort of this worry, and I wound up in his corner. My Uncle Bob and myself were his cornermen. I never knew anything about corner work or anything, so I was in there in this place. It was a club called Sinatra's in Croydon. Sinatra spelt with a C in Croydon.
It might be Caesar's today, that one. Is it not? Sinatra's with a C.
It's what it's called, Sinatra. Yeah. Copyright, And so he knocked him out. He knocked him over. They counted up to about 30. He got up. Then they rung the bell, and it was quite nice. And then there was a third match, and that's when I then
at the Rainbow Theatre in Finsbury Park.
And there was a big argument who's going to do it, and I just in the end I piped up. I was only a kid. I was only about 22, 23. I said, I'll do it. I said, we'll do it. We never need you for. It was Joey Parle's dad and a fella called Roy Shaw, and I just said, I'll do it, and that's how I got involved in it.
So really, in many ways,
accident.
Yeah, but were you still working as a solicitor then? Thought, no, I'm not doing that.
No, I wasn't. That was well gone. I was only about 15 when I was 16.
So were you wheeler dealing, or what were you?
Yeah, I was running my own business, and I brought pool tables over from Australia. We were putting them in pubs, and I had a few interest in a couple of clubs and pubs and things. I had a few things going back.
So that entrepreneurial zeal was already there. The kind of curiosity to do these things. Yeah.
I worked for myself from probably about the age of 19.
So your first licensed show.
Yeah.
Was at the Bloomsbury Crest Hotel, 1980.
Yeah.
And promoting two unknown United States heavyweights.
Well, they were well-known Americans.
Well,
they were well-known over
here.
here.
And over here, of course. So tell us about that. And what was that? Yeah.
Well, what happened? I had a friend in America, or a friend of my uncle's, called Frank Gelb, who actually I think he looks after. He now looks after.
Frank Gelb.
Yeah, GLB. Yeah, he used to work with Top Rank.
Yeah, that's right.
He used to do a lot of their shows there, and he looks after the blind opera singer. And Frank, we're talking, and Chris Dundee, who's Angelo's brother, he was involved. And
so it goes all the way back to those guys.
Angelo was my. I knew Angelo from when he came over.
This is Muhammad Ali's trainer that Frank's talking about.
He was they were big friends of my uncles and his partner, my dad, at the time, and Albert Dimes, who they were partners back in those days, and they were massive friends. I mean, they when Ali came over, they would sort of, be with them and look after them, that sort of stuff. And cut a long story short, they helped me get this fight together, and it was Jerry Martin and O.T. Gordon, if I remember rightly, and it was going to be for American title, and I was going to get some TV for it. But the board can try the regulation there, and I didn't know this stuff. I've taken a license out, I've jumped in, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, Jack the Lad, and think I know it all. But they had a regulation: you couldn't have any TV dates unless you'd run at least 3 or 4 shows. So I couldn't get.
So you'd run into the regulations of the board even then with the very first show, day one, yeah.
And there had been a famous fight quite a few years earlier at the Albert Hall with Leotis Martin, heavyweight fight. It was never televised, but it was rammed out. It was one of the great fights, and everybody thought this was going to be the similar scenario. Anyway, it turned out it was a crap fight, and it was empty. You could have the venue was empty. You could have driven a double-decker bus round it and not knocked anyone over. It was just totally empty, and I absolutely done my money. I'd done my money, a lot of money back then. I lost my money, but it was part of the education and part of. I had to learn quickly on my feet. We were dealing with the border control because they were very much in the cartel's corner and leaned very much towards them back then.
So you do have some success, though. You go all the way through the 80s then, and you're learning. And I hadn't heard you talk about the influence of the Dundees before, and your Uncle Frank.
No, my dad Frank, my Uncle Bob.
Your Uncle Bob, sorry. But was there a feel that you had for it straight away? Because I mean, having been involved nearly 30 years now in boxing, you find out whether you fit in the world, don't you? With around people, because there's a lot of characters in boxing, aren't there? Well, and there's some people don't fit, and some people do, and it's an inexact science in many ways, isn't it? Like I always say this, and I talk about you, and I'll talk about Bob Arum and Don King. and Eddie Hearn to a certain extent, and Dana White and Scott Coker, the MMA promoters. There's no book, there's no university degree on promoting. It's very nuanced. You either have a feel for it, and those people that understand fight sports, and I do count myself amongst them now, you know what makes a good fight, you know what's a good promotion, you know whether something's going to work, you know what excites people. There's no book, is there? There's no, you have to have a feel for it, don't
First
you?
of all, in boxing, you're putting your own money up, so you've got.
Yeah.
It's your taking.
Oh, you are, yes.
Yeah, you're not getting, it's your dough, so you're putting your money up, and I've done that. I've sort of mortgaged houses and done all that, put money up. I've done all those things, but I know I am blowing my own trumpet. I know about fighters. I can spot a good fighter. I can spot a good young fighter. I know, being a promoter, being a manager, making the right matches at the right time is timing. The perfect punch is timing. The perfect match is timing. Seeing if a guy is not as good as he was when you're bringing an up and coming young fighter and so forth. That's all timing. And the promoting comes with it. Seeing what you feel you can sell, what the public will buy. Can you sell, this fighter who's maybe a boring fighter? How are you going to bring him through? It's all different challenges. And at the end of the day, as I say, I've got as much enthusiasm for that now as I had back when I was a kid.
I'm in the company, the very entertaining company of Frank Warren, who has waxed lyrical tonight. He's told us about his times around the likes of Angelo Dundee, how he took on the board at the beginning. You promote all the way through the 80s in the end, Frank. We're going to come to some of the names in the next couple of sections on, from Naseem Hamed, Frank Bruno, Ricky Hatton, Amir Khan, Joe Calzaghe. It goes on and on. Joe Saunders, Tyson Fury. You've always had one of the principal names or a couple of the principal names in British sport. And I also know this because you and I talk about this very often. Whenever we do kind of a deeper piece in the Telegraph, you're about bringing youngsters through as well, about having the next crop always, aren't you? But you promote through the 80s. And towards the end of the 80s, you're flying high at that point, aren't you?
Yeah.
Someone decides to shoot you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 30 years ago, yeah?
Yeah.
It's 30 years ago.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you never, ever look like you suffer trauma from anything. I know you've had disputes with people. I know you love being involved in this. You're a survivor. You're a pioneer, as I said before, an entrepreneur. When you look back on that 30 years ago, given how the world is today, where security is so tight now, where you can't get on a plane without going through a detector, where, do you know what I mean? Where it's just, where the world we now live in, where the incidents we've had around the world.
Yeah.
And in many ways, it was kind of unusual what happened to you back then.
Well, it's unusual for me.
And it hasn't happened
well,
since.
I was in good company. I mean, the Pope got shot. Ronald Reagan got shot.
John Lennon.
I mean, unfortunately,
JFK.
Sadly, they died. But it was quite a shock and quite an experience. But I didn't really, as I say, I'm very much in the moment, and I knew what I had to do. I knew I had to get myself sorted out. I knew that, my family's future and security and my wife and my kids, I had to make sure that I was out there doing what I had to do. And there's no good sitting around feeling sorry for yourself and so forth, because no one, there's some terrible things were said at the time by a couple of people. I was very disappointed with George Francis, what he said, even though he worked later years. He came out with some pretty appalling things. But anyway, the fact of the matter was, it was, I got on with it. I discharged myself from hospital, and I had to get back. My business was in terrible trouble as a result of it, because there was all these terrible rumours flying around, and I actually issued quite a few writs and quite a few solicitors' letters went to newspapers, because there was a lot of irresponsible journalism, linking the bullet that I got shot with another crime, and it was all nonsense. It was all made up. Front page apology I got in one newspaper over it. And cut long story short, I was involved in London Arena. We built an arena in Docklands, 12,500 seater venue, the biggest indoor venue in the UK. I did that because I needed a venue to promote in. And it's all falling apart. So I had to get myself out of hospital, get back in the saddle and sort myself out.
Do you not need to think about it anymore? Is it
I
something
don't
that's
think about
gone?
it. I mean, it's pointless me thinking about it. If I did think about it, then I'd get myself in trouble.
Yeah.
So I don't think
that
about
what
it.
you'd feel hatred or resentment or
It's one of those situations at the time. I'm no different than anybody else. You want to get your revenge. You would want to do something. Certainly, the background I come from, where I was brought up, that's the natural reaction. But had I done that, all I would have been doing was shooting myself again. Because at the end of the day, I would have been, I wouldn't have been able to do what I wanted to do for my family and my kids, and that was all I was concerned about. So,
is it one of the, speaking kind of genuinely and openly and deeply, is it one of the big learning moments in your life in many ways? Because you said, in a way, you took the bigger picture, you took the educated view, and you broke a cycle of, like you say, where you are from. You go and get revenge. You don't let someone do that to you. And in a way, it's one of the bigger picture aspects from your life 30 years on. Look at your lovely children now. They're in their 30s now. You've got 6 grandchildren. Is it 6 or 9? 9 grandchildren.
And one on the way.
And one on the way. I mean, rather than serving a 20 or whatever.
It's not about it, is it? I mean, you've got to remember, there is other things. I mean, for the person who did it, and I know who did it now, the person who did it, I mean, their life's a joke. They got nothing. I mean, I know when I hear where they're at, and obviously, I've continued from a very bad position, having been, my wife was told that it was a 50-50 chance I'd survive the night. From that to be, quite successful in what I'm doing. Despite that, couldn't stop me. Despite all that, they couldn't stop doing what I was going to do, and and I continued to do what I was going to do. So, I don't even dwell on that. All I care about is the good things. If you're going to sit and think about the bad things, I could think about a load of things that happened to me in my life, and that have not gone well, and I can think about things that have gone dreadfully for other people, in their lives. Much worse than I've had, losses. I mean, my younger brother Mark committed suicide. That, to me, if I think about that really is something quite obviously would drag you down. And thinking from my perspective, what could I have done? Could I have given him more time? Could I have shown something more towards him and been there for him more than I was? Because I was doing other things, and those phone calls I was getting, because he was schizophrenic. Some of those phone calls, it was like. And they always come at a moment when you feel you're doing something more important, which wasn't more important. Oh, I'll call you back, and all this. I could have done more. So when I think about some mug who was standing, if he was standing close to me, I'd have got him. My partner at the time, John Bottress, who was a barrister, he got hold of him and put him on the floor. Fella shaking, was that far away from me, couldn't even do it. It shows you what a complete mug he was from that perspective. Weren't very good with it, was he? For what he's supposed to have done. So I look at that, and if I do think about that, I just think, well, that was. I couldn't even think about it because it's irrelevant. It's nothing. For me, that is probably like cutting my finger. It's nothing. All I care about is what I'm doing today, and worry. And if I've got any, my only worries are I will worry about the future of my family. What I do today is all I care about, because if I'm living in the moment, I'm doing okay.
Well, you have really lived in the moment. You are very much probably the leading figure in British boxing, historically.
You mean the oldest geezer in British boxing?
All right, that's another way of saying it. Yeah, and you've promoted really the last 30 years. I mean, you look at the list, because they are all standouts. Prince Naseem Hamed. The ascent of Ricky Hatton to the IBF light welterweight championship of the world after beating Kostya in 2005. Yeah. Talk about timing. Yeah. What do you remember of that night?
I remember, to get Ricky to fight, I got him a final eliminator for the title, and Kostya was a big Showtime fighter in America, and Showtime put a lot of resources behind him. He was a great fighter, Kostya, and I remember he had a shoulder injury, and Ricky,
and a period of inactivity leading up to, which is very smart that you'd noticed.
What happened is you had the inactivity because of me. We was in a position, and we agreed a deal. And I said to Ricky kept saying, "Well, let's fight him now." I said, "No, let's do it. I'll tell you when we'll do it. And eventually we made the fight, but when we agreed to terms, I didn't promote the fight for 6 months afterwards. And that I knew it'd be Ricky's night. And I remember telling him at the time, I said, this is your night. You've got to put it on this guy. You've got to bully the life out of him. You've got to break his spirit, break his heart. You've got to be on him. This can really, you can do this. And he, and he did it. I mean, at the end of the day, got in the ring and done what he had.
It was one of the great nights in British boxing, that
was
wasn't
one
it?
of the great nights.
Yeah.
But you know what? That was Ricky's greatest night in British.
I
And
agree.
He always says that.
His Everest.
That was his pinnacle.
Yeah. When you promoted Joe Calzaghe, again, who was really hard to promote in the beginning. I do remember this. So he never wanted to leave Cardiff,
He was
did
lazy.
he? No, but he was...
He was lazy.
He has a... I don't agree with you.
Well, you don't know him. I know
No,
him. He was
I do
lazy.
know him. No, I do know him. But yes, lazy in from your perspective. But also one of those... He was a homeboy, didn't want to leave Newbridge, didn't like the bright lights of London at the time, didn't want to come down here.
Joe Calzaghe pulled out of 50% of his fights, top-level fights. That's what Joe did. Great fighter. His dad done a great job with him when you consider his dad never had a great background as a trainer, but he got a lot out of him. But Joe kept pulling out of fights.
And yet, 2 nights that I will never forget. The Jeff Lacey fight, which I'll never forget. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that. It was so amazing. And I know you've got stories behind that. When Joe Calzaghe fought this guy that was the new Mike Tyson of the light heavyweight, the super middleweight division that was super middleweight. And the fight with Kessler at Cardiff.
Yeah.
They
They're great nights.
They were great nights. And I know that Calzaghe didn't want to fight.
One of them was not going to happen.
Yeah,
because
he was worried about his hands for Jeff Lacey, and it was one of the greatest performances you'll ever see.
Worried about what happened that night? First of all, he was a massive underdog. Nobody fancied him at all. I mean, nobody fancied him, and I really did fancy him. I brought Jeff Lacey over. I put him on 2 shows. I watched a load of filming, and I knew that Joe would beat him. I knew his style would beat him. And it was the week before the fight, and his dad Enzo rang me up, and he said, remember, the fight had already been postponed once, and he phoned me up, and he said, Joe's not fighting. I said, what? He said he's hurt his hand. I went, obviously we're all disappointed. I said, look, disappointed. I said, but, what can we do? I said, they'll probably strip him, etc., but he can't fight with a bad hand, obviously. And his dad said to me, there's nothing wrong with his hand. He said, it's all in his head. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I'm telling you, this is his dad. This is not, your dad's going to say...
Without his dad, he'd never have got to where he was, Frank. Well, he wouldn't have. He drove him.
Right, so then he said, you're going to have to speak to him. So I rang him, and I said to him, what's the matter with you? So and he was like, hello, Frank, and he was all like down and whatever, and I was talking. I said, listen, and I've never, it's funny, we talk about health and everything, but his dad's told me there's nothing wrong. His dad's told me that. So I said to him, you beat him with one hand. And what I said, this fella will not lay a glove on you. I said, he's too limited. They're all, I'm telling you, your style, you'll absolutely, it'll be a night out. I said, all you need is go and buy yourself a trombone and just practice. That's all you need to do. I said, you knock his head off. I said, that's all you need to do. And I was on the phone for about half an hour. And from the conversation, hello, Frank, it was like, by the end of it, can't we have the fight today? That's where he was. Anyway, he's on
Maybe
there.
he suffered from depression that we never knew about,
I don't know.
Times are changing, aren't they?
Yeah, that's quite right. That's a very, very point. But his dad rang me back later, and his dad said to me, I don't know what you said, but it's all good, he's on, and that. I said, lovely. I said, sure, he's all right, though. Yeah, he's definitely right. That fight, the box stacks for that were more punches thrown by any fighter who's supposed to have a bad hand than anyone. And what I did, as he took his gloves off, I went, well done, and I shook the hand.
Really hard.
And I squeezed it as hard as I could, and he never even flinched.
You're listening to Fight Night on TalkSport. I'm in the marvellous company tonight and thoroughly enjoying it, I'm sure as you all are, with Mr. Frank Warren. We'll be back right after this. I hope you've been enjoying the show so far. I think Mr. Frank Warren in fine form. His office is my studio tonight. He's kindly allowed us into his office out in Broxbourne for the day. Frank, it's lovely to be here. We talked about all the characters you promoted, the success with Ricky Hatton, with Joe Calzaghe, with Amir Khan, with all these different fighters. Frank Bruno, we didn't really go into. Obviously, you got him a world title at the 4th attempt, wasn't it? On a night that we all remember, where we were all praying with our hands together in the last 2 rounds. I'm sure they were saying, "Come on, Frank, hold on," and all these great nights. But has anyone ever produced the story that Tyson Fury has to win the world title? In fact, I remember doing stories with you a year before, and you said, listen, this guy's 6'9", he's a clever boxer. You just watch him outbox at the XL Arena on that night of terrible fog that the show ran very late. In fact, I was commentating with Talk Sport that night. I think Ian Darke was doing the commentary with us that night. Everyone was lost in the pea soup fog afterwards. There were lots of travellers there. It was a kind of a messy night, if I can put it that way, okay? But within the messiness of the night, Tyson Fury put on a display against Derek Chisora with a left uppercut most of the night from southpaw. We'd never seen that from him before. And I remember interviewing you the week after or whenever it was, because I was sitting in my car outside my London flat. I remember speaking to you. You said, listen, he's going to go, when he gets the chance, this guy will school Vladimir Klitschko. You watch. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do.
And you just stuck to it. And I went with the story, and I've never forgotten that, because as we know, you have an ability to see the silhouettes moving. You just know, don't you? You've been in it too long. This guy wins the world title, has his mental health issues, does a cocaine binge, gets rung up randomly by a guy from Rolling Stone, does the whole story, relinquishes his titles, doesn't take a £10 million rematch with Vladimir Klitschko because he's off on one. He balloons to 28 stone. I saw him at 28 stone. I went to Marbella when he first met Ben Davis and was with Billy Joe. I went running on the beach with them. And you know what they're like. If they trust you, you're in their circle. They're those kind of people, aren't they?
Yeah.
He loses 10 stone in weight. The weight of Melania Trump, as I always say, yeah?
Ricky Hatton.
Oh, the weight of Ricky Hatton.
A fighting weight,
Ricky Hatton. He goes and does this amazing thing that we were all at in December last year. Talk to me about Tyson Fury. Have you ever been involved or promoted anyone quite like this?
He's a remarkable character. All those things you said, right. And when he fought Danny Williams, I thought Derek Chisora.
Yeah, the second time.
When he fought Derek Chisora the second time, Derek Chisora was gone on a roll. He had some good wins under his belt.
He wasn't overweight for once, was he either?
And I felt that he was going to give him a lot of problems. And some of us felt that he'd win it, and it was a final eliminator for the title. He scored him. He never lost a second of any round until he stopped him. And, I just felt then, that he is something much more special than I thought he was. And that's how it's been. And he had a terrible, terrible time. When you look at all the depths of despair, he was suicidal. I mean, that's the worst you can be when you're in so much pain. You think the only way that you can get rid of that pain is to kill yourself. That gets rid of the pain. And he was that low. But the bottom, he was at the bottom, and he's come back to the top. And it's boxing that's giving that. It's obviously his determination and his family, but it's boxing that's giving him some direction. Trains hard now. He's always in great shape. You look at him. He's always. I mean, he's complete. He's an athlete. He looks an athlete now. He's always had that natural inborn stamina. He's got a great boxing brain. He's very light on his feet. He's a very smart guy as far as boxing is concerned. And I think his comeback is probably one of the greatest comebacks and I mean this, of any boxer I can think of
in history.
Yeah, because of where he was. Where the time out the ring and the troubles that he had. Ali had that time out the ring, but he wasn't, well, to my knowledge, he wasn't suicidal. He wasn't doing coke. He wasn't boozing. He wasn't, ballooning up in weight. For Tyson, what he's done, I think, is phenomenal. And whatever happens, he's a winner by getting himself to where he's at now. Now he's got a fight in September. We can talk about it now because obviously it's going to be done. He's fighting on the 14th September in Vegas.
Is that definitely confirmed?
Yeah.
Not the 21st?
No, it's the 14th.
Definitely against Otto Wallin.
Yeah. Undefeated Swedish guy.
Yeah.
So he's got that, and hopefully he'll come through that fight.
Vegas is right for him, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
There was talk about Boston and New York, but isn't it instinctively, just judging from that last fight, he is so Vegas. Yeah. No,
but what he is.
That was a sigh there. What?
No, because he is.
Come on, you love Vegas as well, don't you?
It's not like it used to be years ago. I mean, when I used to go there, it was a different class. It was 100 million times.
When Sinatra with an S was playing, yeah.
Right. I promoted Sinatra.
Tell us about that. Tell us about that.
What about what?
Tell us about promoting Frank Sinatra.
It was good fun. It was good fun, London Arena, and looking after him, and you know, he was. It was good fun.
He loved his fight stuff as well.
He loved his fight. He was a photographer at the Alley.
Fraser fight in New York, for Time magazine, I think.
Time magazine, he took the photograph. Yeah. He was a good guy, but I'm digressing.
No, digress.
But getting back to
when it's Sinatra, you've got to digress.
Tyson was a really, you know, he's great.
It couldn't have been a bigger success, Vegas, could it? Against opponent of the.
But it's about building. It's about building. All this scenario with ESPN is all about building towards the return match with Deontay Wilder, which was a great fight, probably one of the best heavyweight fights, the most dramatic heavyweight fights in a long time, involving the biggest puncher probably in the heavyweight division in the last
single puncher. No, I think the biggest single puncher ever, maybe.
Well, you know,
who else?
Ernie Shavers and you know.
Yes, but look what he's able to do.
Yeah,
he could have lived with anyone, surely, with that punch.
He can punch. He's a massive puncher.
Yeah.
And a great and
a great character as well.
And he is. I like him. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
But you're building up for this rematch, and this rematch, I think, provided Deontay's got a fight, I think, in early November against Ortiz, provided he comes through that is going to be a huge fight. So they've both got to win their respective fights. However, in heavyweight boxing, anything can happen, and I mean anything. Go and ask Anthony Joshua, he was a massive odds-on against
Andy Ruiz Jr., yeah.
Massive odds-on, and he got just taken apart that night.
I know people will be listening to this saying, come on, Gareth, ask Frank then, why on earth can't Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder rematch maybe 8 months later? Why does there have to be a growth period to make it a fight a year and a half later?
It could have happened, but it's going to be a bigger fight now. It's going to be shown, I believe when it goes on, it'll be shown by 2 channels. And that's a bigger fighter.
So it's time for growth is what it is. It's time to allow them to grow.
And also their earning capacity. They're in there. They've got to make the best of what they can for a big fight.
It's just the way boxing is, isn't it?
No, it's the way. Well, hang on a minute. You're talking about these are fighters. You know, you could turn that logic on its head and say they did that with Ruiz and with
Joshua.
With Joshua, where was Ruiz rated?
Not highly.
So where was he? And he just shows you what can happen.
No, he told me when I went to see him in Los Angeles that a couple of years earlier, or a year and a bit earlier, he'd been paid $30,000 to fight.
There you go. So anything can happen. But you're asking why this happened. What has got to happen? What you got to remember that Deontay Wilder signed up with Showtime for 2 fights, two fights before this. He's had 1. He's got this one. What's Tyson going to do? Sit on his backside and wait until February before he fights? No, he's not. He's going to fight somebody. And he's going to fight somebody who's ranked in that top 5 or 6, and that's what he's doing.
No, I know how it works, but I think for our listeners, it needs explaining sometimes. It's just the way it works, because it's just that it's like boxers are built at the beginning. You don't put them in with a world beater when they're a novice. You don't.
I remember watching Arsenal play. I remember watching Arsenal play Everton many years ago, and they brought this young kid on called Wayne Rooney. He didn't play for 90 minutes. At the time he was on, he was brilliant, but he couldn't have played him for 90 minutes. Maybe you could, I don't know. But they have to learn their trade, and it takes time. You don't just throw them in the deep end, and you can't do that with fighters. Fighters need to learn their trade. Now, Tyson's learnt his trade. Bearing in mind he'd been out the ring for nearly 3 years, and everybody was saying to me, but he's only fought 2 easy fights as a comeback. He's entitled to those 2 fights because of what happened with his lifestyle and being out the ring. And you're putting him in with Deontay Wilder. That's terrible. You're doing that. You can't win.
No, fair enough. Finally, 2 little questions to finish off on the heavyweight division. First one on Anthony Joshua, and I mean little questions. Are the fights with Anthony Joshua? Is the fight with Anthony Joshua and the winner of Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, let's say it's Tyson Fury, is the Tyson Fury-Anthony Joshua fight in the UK still a huge fight?
Yeah, of course, even if he loses.
The biggest in history? Yeah. Most grossing fight in history?
If Joshua regains his title and Tyson's got the title, I think it'd be the biggest sporting event since England won the World Cup. It'd be
in cricket?
In
football,
and cricket. But you know...
That only happened a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that did. It was fantastic. And don't get me wrong, it's exciting. I mean, I loved it. I'm not a big cricket fan, but I was on the edge.
But it affected the whole country when we won the World Cup in 66.
But you know what? The boxing is much, much bigger. I don't care what anyone says. Everybody knows the world heavyweight champion. He was always the most famous sportsman on the planet. going back to, to the Marcianos, to the Dempseys, to the Sonny Listons, the Allies and whatever, they're always the most famous sportsmen. A cricketer's not the most famous sportsman on the planet.
And just as we finish, it's funny, because we had Deontay Wilder in the studio.
Yeah.
He was brilliant with us a couple of weeks ago. You heard it, no doubt. And he is so shocked because that fight with Tyson Fury has made him a massive star in the UK as well. Yeah. He cannot walk anywhere now. Listen, it's been absolutely brilliant having you with me in the studio, in your office, home from home. Thank you so much indeed,
Pleasure,
Frank,
Gareth.
and always great to be with you. Thank you so much.
And you, mate. All the best.
That was another Fighting Spirits podcast with me, Gareth A Davies. My thanks to Frank Warren. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to my website at garethadavis.com. See you next time.